Life at sea often feels endless, days of rolling waves, the same horizon, and the quiet hum of engines filling the silence. For many sailors, monotony becomes routine. But every so often, the ocean hides a secret, waiting to reveal itself to those who dare patrol its depths. And for a team of Sri Lankan naval officers, what they encountered one ordinary day would become a story almost too unbelievable to tell. 10 miles off the Sri Lankan coast, the naval crew was performing one of their routine missions. The waters were calm, the skies dim, and nothing suggested danger or surprise. Their job, as always, was to keep the waters safe, to watch for smugglers, stranded boats, or anything unusual. But then, one officer spotted something strange floating in the distance. At first, it looked like debris, maybe a large log swept out to sea, or perhaps a broken container lost from a cargo ship. Yet as they drew closer, the object shifted. It moved with a rhythm too deliberate, too alive. The crew's confusion grew into shock as the truth became undeniable. Floating in the vast Indian Ocean was not a log, not a whale, and not any sea creature they had ever encountered. It was an elephant. The men rubbed their eyes in disbelief. Elephants were creatures of the land, not of the sea. Whales, yes. Sharks, certainly. But an elephant? Out here? It seemed impossible. The naval officers quickly pieced together a theory. They suspected the giant animal had been attempting to cross a lagoon and was swept away by the rushing current. Strong as it was, the tide had carried it further and further until it found itself stranded in the open ocean. Remarkably, elephants are natural swimmers. With their massive, buoyant bodies, they can float for long periods, and their trunks serve as snorkels, keeping them alive in deep waters. But even the strongest animal has its limits. This elephant, later nicknamed Jumbo, was clearly struggling. His movements were slow, his eyes tired, and his breaths deep and labored. Time was running out. The naval team knew that if they didn't act fast, Jumbo's strength would fail, and the ocean would claim him. Yet saving an animal of that size was no simple task. The crew was equipped for maritime patrols, not for elephant rescues. Still, they refused to abandon him. Over their radios, they urgently called for backup. Within hours, a second naval vessel arrived, bringing with it members of the Wildlife Department specialists who might know what to do if Jumbo's condition worsened. Together, they devised a daring plan. Pulling the elephant on board was impossible. No ship could handle his size and weight. Instead, they would tow him back toward shallow waters. It was risky. The process had to be slow enough so Jumbo could keep his trunk above water to breathe, but fast enough to beat the creeping fatigue that was threatening his life. The rescue began. Ropes were carefully secured, and slowly the ship tugged Jumbo toward the shore. Hours passed. The sun sank lower in the sky, painting the water crimson, but the crew pressed on. Jumbo fought to keep his trunk raised, sometimes sinking lower, his exhaustion evident. Each minute felt like a battle against time, and every sailor silently wondered, would they be too late? Night began to fall, wrapping the ocean in darkness, but the mission could not stop. With every pull, they were closer to shore, closer to saving a creature who should never have been here in the first place. The night air grew colder, the waves restless, and yet the crew of the Sri Lankan Navy refused to give in. Their spotlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the weary outline of Jumbo as he fought to stay afloat. Every so often, his trunk broke the surface with a desperate gasp, spraying water into the night sky. It was a haunting sound, a reminder of just how fragile life becomes when nature turns against you. Hours dragged on, and still the sailors held their course. They adjusted the ropes, making sure the pull was steady and gentle. Any sudden force might injure Jumbo, or worse, drag him beneath the surface. The team communicated in sharp whispers, their eyes never leaving the elephant's massive shadow. They had all seen dangerous missions before, but this was different. This was not just duty, it was humanity. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the coastline began to rise on the horizon. The water beneath them grew shallower, the color changing from dark blue to a softer green. Jumbo seemed to sense it too. Though exhausted, his movements became steadier, stronger, as if he knew he was close to safety. Step by step, tug by tug, he followed the guidance of the ships. At last, his massive feet touched the sandy floor beneath the water. Relief washed over the rescuers as Jumbo slowly began to walk on his own. The ropes slackened, and the sailors carefully released him, watching in awe as the giant creature pushed forward toward the safety of the lagoon. He staggered at first, his body trembling from fatigue, but he pressed on until the water was shallow enough for him to breathe easily and stand tall again. The mission was over. Against all odds, they had saved him. On the shore, members of the wildlife team observed closely, ready to step in if Jumbo collapsed. But the elephant, though drained, managed to keep moving. His trunk lifted high, as if in a gesture of thanks, before he finally disappeared into the trees. For the naval officers, it was a moment they would never forget. They had seen many things during their time at sea, smugglers, storms, and rescues, but never an elephant, lost and fighting for its life in the depths of the ocean. It was pure chance that they had been there, patrolling that very stretch of water on that very day. One officer later remarked, "It was luck, fate even. Had we been somewhere else, Jumbo wouldn't have survived the night." The story quickly spread across Sri Lanka and beyond, capturing the hearts of people around the world. Many called it a miracle, proof that sometimes the most unlikely creatures can endure the harshest of battles with a little help from those willing to lend a hand. As for Jumbo, no one knows exactly where he wandered after that night. Perhaps he rejoined a herd, or perhaps he roams the forests alone. But somewhere out there, in the wild expanse of Sri Lanka, lives an elephant who once swam with the sea and survived. And for the sailors who rescued him, the memory remains etched into their hearts, a reminder that kindness and courage are never wasted, and that even in the darkest waters there is always hope.